Hail, hail. Good evening, folks, and welcome along to this special spin-off episode of the EndlessCelts podcast. My name's Anthony. I'm one of the show's regular contributors, but I'm in the host chair for tonight. And tonight, we're not going to be doing the usual run-of-the-mill episode. We're going to be diving off and looking a little bit more in depth at Celtics financial model and just a sort of discussion about how money's totally transformed the beautiful game, aptly named MoneyBall. To discuss all that and more, I'm joined by our very special guest tonight. He's making his debut on the show. We're absolutely delighted to have him on. It's Mr. Nic Boyle. How are you tonight, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, Tony. How's you, mate?
I'm doing well, mate. Doing well. Really looking forward to getting stuck into this. And just before we get started, I just want to say Stephen's going to be keeping an eye. Our usual host will be keeping an eye on all the comments. So everyone, please feel free to get involved and give us your thoughts and views on all the discussion points. And obviously, welcome along everyone who's tuning in. We appreciate you've got a lot of options tonight. It's a Champions League night, but you know, who else? There's only one show in town, and that's all things Celtic. So thanks to everyone for coming along and get involved in the show. And we'll bring up some of the best comments and discuss that as the show goes on. But before we go any further into all things financial, Nic, I'll just give yourself a chance just to sort of introduce yourself and your life as a Celtic supporter as well.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Yeah, so, my life in Celtic, we were, from an early age, brought up Celtic supporters. My first game was 1977. It was the Jock Stein testimonial when Big Jock was moved upstairs. I was there. I think he might even be on tonight. My cousin Mark was there with his dad and my dad, and I remember that night. Actually, I think we got a clip round the ear for cheering Kenny Dalglish, who was back with Liverpool that night. But just even that night, standing in the terrace, and it wasn't a European night, but it was a weeknight. It was dark, the floodlights on. You just kind of fall in love from that early age, and then through the years, my great uncle Johnny, with us all. I think that's when you could get 8, 9, 10 people in a car, and he would take us along to the games, and then as we moved and got older, going on the buses, and then getting our season tickets and going with my brother and my pal. And now we do it slightly differently now, but Celtic, there is only one team for me, and like everybody else, you go through the highs and the lows, and you think you can run the club better than those who are there. So hopefully tonight we're not trying to do that. We're only trying to point out, I think, where the model has worked in the past, and where I think we need to learn from failings in the past. And as I think we've talked about a few times, Tony, is while we're having that success at the moment, is building on that success and not letting us go backwards from there.
Absolutely. And so just before we actually get into the models again, I suppose we just have to touch very briefly, considering we were both there on Sunday. We had a fantastic day down at the Tony Macaroni, a long overdue win at Livingston away, giving us a massive 3 points and what we hope will be a successful title charge. We played very well and got the result we deserved on Sunday, didn't we?
I think we played tremendous on Sunday, and I think we were fortunate to be in the company and sit through the game with Celtic legend Murdo McLeod. So it was great to get his analysis as the game went on and see how we were setting up. But what I think Ange showed on Sunday was a lot of people have been critical in some games that should he change his 4-3-3. I think what he showed on Sunday is he didn't need to change his 4-3-3. He kept his 4-3-3, but he changed the personnel. I thought on Sunday, Ralston and Forrest were immense up the right-hand side. They were solid. They were direct. I thought Beaton played his part exceptionally well in covering the defence. We obviously still have the hands in the over the eyes moments at set pieces, and there was a couple of them on Sunday. But again, I think Jota's got every trick in the book. But I think what he did is he was more direct on Sunday as well from that point of view. And the pitch didn't, apart from maybe balls that were chipped in and held up, I actually thought we moved the ball quite quickly on the surface as well. And there was a great point made by Murdo Livingston would normally sit in and play the low block and then try and catch us. But what we did on Sunday is we actually pushed them back. So they actually had to defend rather than set out to defend. And you could see very early we were creating gaps. And, I think Murdo's prediction at the start, if you remember, when we asked him, put him on the spot, he said it was 3-1, and at 3-0, I said, you're closest. The only thing is they've got to score now, Nick. And they did. But, yeah, I thought we still, had some moments where they could have hurt us. But, I thought it was a far better performance on Sunday than we've ever played at Livingston. In fact, that was my 5th time hosting the hospitality. If we hadn't picked up 3 points on Sunday, I think I would have finished that. But no, absolute tremendous, and it should give us the encouragement now, because we did get a bit. I think we have got a bit sloppy in the games prior to that since the Rangers game. But I think that'll give them all a lift, and we should really be on the front foot now, and hopefully the game's in go in our favour. But it was absolutely fantastic, and the big thing that really was interesting, all the small scraps about on the pitch, we won them. So great effort with the lads on Sunday, Tony.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. We had an absolutely fantastic day, and as I say, a long overdue one, but it was definitely one to enjoy. A nice day out in the sun at Livingston, and our Q&A session, the legend that is Murdo McLeod afterwards. It was couldn't have asked for a better way to spend a Sunday. And just before we go any further, just want to say hello to everybody who's joining in. Some of the comments are coming up on the screen. Special mention to our debut listener, one of our Right Good Tim's forum colleagues, Jamie O'Kane. Hope you enjoyed tonight's show, Jamie. I know me and you always have a few discussions about how the Celtic run themselves financially, so got delighted you're joining us tonight, and a hello again to everybody else. So let's get right into the thick of it, as it were, Nick. The sort of reason we're going to discuss tonight is, Celtic, how they operate as a club financially. Now we'll come to the hard figures in just a moment, but before we do, I just want you to sort of paint a picture and sort of let everyone know, for those, because there's a couple of generations of Celtic supporters now won't have known anything before Ferguson and how the club perhaps operated on a financial footing before the takeover in '94. So even if you could just sort of illustrate how things were then, how things are now, and then we can get into the hard numbers.
Yeah, I think prior to the ADAP days and leading up to Fergus taking over the club, we always remember that famous statement on the steps of Celtic Park: "The rebels have won." But disappointed to see a club like Celtic get into that situation at the time, and that was down to really, from my point of view, looking back, that was mismanagement. It was, for me, it was personal greed at the time. And when you look at everything that we built on, through the 70s and then into the 80s, and again, the double winning team of the 80s, the success that we had previous either, we never ever built on anything. The team wasn't proactively invested in, whether it be the Kellys, whether it be the Whites. It was everybody, and well, some of the younger viewers might not see it, but what I would say, it was the biscuit tin mentality, from that point of view. So, they decided how much they were going to spend on a player. The manager might need 2 or 3 different players. Players, as we know, we've had Frank McAvenny at the Armanville Stadium as well. Broken promises, and that's not the way to run a football club. And then, obviously, it came and hurt them in the end. But we went through that period where we had to be second, and we don't like being there. And there was no investment around the stadium at the time either. It was we all loved being there. I loved going to the old jungle, but at the same time, the facilities weren't great either. And every now and again, would bring a player in that excited us, but more times than not, we were disappointed in the days up to Fergus coming in and then starting to run the business, run the football club like a business.
Yeah, that's it. And when Fergus took over, it was significant investment from himself and other members of the board. Of course, there is the famous quote where he actually paid off some of what Celtic owed without actually having direct control of the club. The sort of takeover deal still had to be thrashed out within the corridors of Celtic Park. But he came in, him and others put their money where their mouth is, gave the supporters the opportunity to get involved as well. We had the share issue at its time, the biggest share issue ever in British football, which helped finance the new era at Celtic. It obviously paid huge. It went far towards the new stadium. You think of your Pierre Van Hooijdonks, etc. They were the first sort of wave of new exciting players, and that we obviously won the Scottish Cup in Tommy's first year when Celtic Park was being rebuilt. But Fergus always says it was one of his legacies that he just wanted the club to be on a sound financial footing. He almost didn't. His primary function wasn't to stop Rangers winning 10 in a row, for example. It was all about Celtic being here 30, 40, 50 years in a secure footing from where he took over. How do you think the sort of PLC sort of set up of that helps Celtic do so?
Well, I think the PLC it was an important part for us to get sustainability. There'll always be supporters, and they're not. Nobody's right and nobody's wrong here, because everybody's got a point of view. So from that point of view, people will have their own reasons for not liking certain board members at the moment and what goes on there, or board members of the past. But what a board gives you, if it's run properly, and at times, probably we've been overcautious through the board in recent times. But if done properly, a board absolutely gives you sustainability. And you look at the quality of the individuals on our board, especially now. We got ourselves in a bit of a tangle. We should never have got in the mess that we've got to in the last period. But going back to Fergus, again, I remember the day, that Fergus said he was walking away and everything that was going to happen. Fergus laid out his plan. He told us that he'd build us a stadium. He told us it would have silverware before he left. And he told us we'd have a team that would be proud of on the park, and a manager that would be proud of. Well, he achieved all of that. And even when he left, there were certain quarters of the support that didn't like the money that he took out at the time. But Fergus didn't put his own money in. He had very good contacts around the world, and they convinced the people around the world, investors, to put their money into Celtic Football Club. So they had to get a return for their investment as well, Tony. So, but I think what happened there is you're absolutely right. What you started to see is, Tommy Burns especially did get good investment. You had the Van Hooijdonks, you had the Cadettes, you had the Canios, and then we started to build local talent around it. We just came up, Tommy, God bless him, just came up against a very strong team from across the city at that point. Probably illegally, an illegal team when we look back, but more the front. Tommy deserved more, and Fergus deserved more for his investment. But it allowed us to build on that. But we've had stutters along the way, and we'll cover that. But a PLC, and I think we'll talk later. I think it's on the agenda that we talk about fan ownership as well, and is that maybe a way forward? And we can briefly touch on that. But right now, where we are, and you look at the financials, a PLC is certainly the way we should have went, and still should go at the moment, in my opinion.
That's it. You touch about the quality of individual on the board, and I do agree with that, as much as perhaps that there's times where they do frustrate you. When these guys in all of their respected fields are well respected, they're held in high regard. Especially in the stock exchange and places like that. And whether not all of us, might not agree with certain decisions that are made, etc. I think you're absolutely bang on, Nick, that we all just we want the club to be successful, of course we do, but I think part of it is we also want the club to be around and to thrive for generations to come. And perhaps businessman that looked for, just quiet successes rather than, sound bites to the daily records. Definitely the way forward. And when you look at, obviously, around the time of Martin O'Neill coming in, Celtic did spend big. There's absolutely no two ways about it. Although around that point we did have the backing of a massive Sky deal at the time. It was a deal that wasn't really renewed for a variety of reasons, and it was sort of bad management, not just on Celtic's part, you could argue, but the whole of Scottish football, that we sort of, they didn't deal with the renegotiations of that Sky deal really well at all. And when that deal collapsed, you're looking at a Celtic squad that's getting massive investment in terms of transfer fees. The wage bill was extortionate. And although obviously we had the magnificent run to Seville, we have to remember that how little profit we did actually make that season because of our failure to qualify for the Champions League. In 2003, the summer after Seville, that was around the time where Peter Lawwell came in. Now, Peter Lawwell's a divisive figure at Celtic. Of course he is, for no other reason, for any other reason, perhaps just for the length of time he's at the club. Anyone who's at a football club for that length of time is going to gather all sorts of different opinions. But I think one thing that can't be debated is the effect that his legacy at Celtic. But obviously, but also from his accountancy background, anyone walking into the job in which he did in 2003 and looking at our expenditure and our outgoings at the time, there was no way that we could have sustained that without almost guaranteed Champions League income money at the very least, which we were never ever going to be guaranteed. So you have to give Peter Lawwell credit in that regard, you would say, in the terms of, yes, the wage bill went down. Perhaps the quality player wasn't up to what we were used to under the likes of Martin O'Neill, but Celtic were still successful on the park and were, regulars in European competition as well. Also, while the club became a little bit more sort of sustainable in terms of financial outgoings.
Yeah, I think just taking you back, I'll touch on Peter Lawwell coming into the club, but if you go back to the Martin O'Neill era when we brought Martin in, I've been fortunate enough on 2 or 3 occasions to be in his company. He still talks about beating me by 1 point at Still M Petrov's golf day, and he still harps on about that. But going back to that at the time, Dermot Desmond was looking for a big manager, and he spoke to Alec Ferguson. Alec Ferguson had one name, and that was Martin O'Neill. But what he said to Dermot at the time was, Dermot, you're going to get Martin. Martin O'Neill will be your next manager, but you need to back him. You need to support him. So, Martin came in and he already had that at his disposal. That was already a commitment that Dermot Desmond had made. Now, you're right. They were some of the best times being a Celtic supporter. In fairness, you remember the run that we went on. It was great, and some of the players that we had there, and 6-2 against Rangers. I'll always remember that day and everything, and the treble of that year. It was tremendous, and the players that we had, the Suttons, the Hartsons, joining Larsson, who was already there, in fairness, but having them in your team, the signings of Alan Thompson were tremendous. Bringing Neil Lennon to the club at the time, it was absolutely fantastic. The issue that we then came into, unfortunately, was it comes back to what we'll talk about. Celtic never had a succession plan. So when Martin was standing down, and the reasons were that his wife was unwell at the time, there was no sustainable financial plan behind it. So the quickest and easiest thing, and I'm not going to argue with those who say it might have been jobs for the boys at the time and looking after old pals. That's people's opinion. But we signed back some certain players on big contracts who basically had their best years at Celtic. Gordon Strachan came in, and he had to deal with that right off the bat. But actually, if you look at Gordon Strachan at the time and the way he went about his business and got the best out of the players that he had, he did a fantastic job. And he got us through to the group stages of the Champions League. We'll always remember that night against Manchester United and Nakamura's goal. And I remember that night thinking, God, we'll beat Man United and everything that went with it. But when we didn't realise once we got in and everything that was getting talked about we were through. We'd qualified. You know, it was unbelievable. But going back to Pete Lawler, so Peter came in and, you know, a fantastic business acumen. What happened thereafter was, I'll come back to, no different really, in my opinion, from the Whites and the Kellys. The power came in. We had a fantastic scouting manager at the club at the time that we brought from Hibs, and John Park, and he was absolutely fantastic. Fantastic at identifying the players that we brought in at the time. But Peter wanted to become chief negotiator. He wanted to become a kind of unofficial director of football. And when you're not in these circles, that's a very difficult thing to do, because what you're doing is you're showing your power of negotiation, and you're showing the power that you're prepared to walk away from the table. You know, you go back to even, I think, I can't remember the season it was, but Gordon Strachan was desperate on a centre forward in the winter transfer window, and he identified Stephen Fletcher. Now, we never got Stephen Fletcher, and to this day, it probably cost us the league that year. You know, we've seen it again under Pete Lawler's reign for things like £300,000 and £400,000. You lose a player like John McGinn at the time, you know. So, you know, but these are all knee-jerk. These are all opportunities that come upon us. We don't create the opportunities, Tony. We're not creating a vacuum and a procession and a conveyor belt of players to suit a model. John Park did a fantastic job, and he probably should have been promoted further at the time. But John obviously moved on as well, because I feel that, you know, he was out identifying the players, but some players we got, some players we didn't. But for me, and we'll get to be talking about a director of football, because we talked about it so much through the summer that it was required. And then we got Ange, you know, and that's went quiet. But we'll come to that. But absolutely, when you talk about Pete Lawler, I think, yes, as a businessman, and how he handled our profit and loss sheet at the time, fantastic. But not a director of football, and he should never have been in a position where he was negotiating or identifying or being the final say on players from that point of view. And he did at the end, and it was his downfall. Yeah, it flexed his muscles and almost. And I think it's a shame that he got to there, but the supporters became insignificant in the year that we threw away 10 in a row.
Absolutely, and you know, for better or worse, it will sadly be, perhaps it will be something he'll offer as much as perhaps the players on the park. It'll be something that I'll always live with him, I'm sure. But by the same point, we can't, like you say, take away a lot of the many good things he did at the club as well, which is absolutely true. But moving on to the actual figures, Nick, and we've recently done our 6-month interim results, and that's where we sort of say the MoneyBall really sort of kicks off, because we've got to remember we're not out of this pandemic yet. We are still in it, but some of the results that came out were deeply impressive, considering how much that we have spent on players in the process, and how of course a lot of our income will be based on supporters being in the stadium, which they weren't there for, you know, match day revenue, etc. But it's a great testament to the supporters. You know, we still sold out all our season tickets whilst we were under no guarantee that we were going to get back into the stadium. We sort of help keep things on the road. But when you look at just some of them, and I've got 2020's figures next to me as well, just as a sort of comparison, and it just shows you the effect that supporters north of the border really, you know, bums on seats really has an effect in Scotland. You know, our revenue, as we were discussing before we came on here, 52.9 million, which is an increase of nearly 30% from 2020. We've got a trading profit of 7 million, transfer profit of 25.8 million, a profit before tax of 27.6 million, and our net cash reserves are sitting at £25.6 million. I didn't actually realise this until I was doing some research for the show as well, that Celtic do have a credit facility arrangement with the banks as well of £13 million if it's ever required. But even in this, the most darkest of times, the last 2 years with coronavirus, it's not a facility that we've actually ever had to use for a long, long time, which, of course, there will be a lot of supporters tuning in tonight and saying we've got all of this money in the bank, but yet we're still not competing in certain aspects of Europe, and of course as well, not winning the 10 in a row will always be a big thing. Stephen, you get paid even more than that for your addition. Me and the rest of the boys are still waiting on our checks coming through the post. But just as you say, no matter what our views are on PLC, you have to. We've got to make money somehow in this modern game, and posting profits and numbers like that, it just goes to show that we are on a strong financial footing.
Yeah, I agree, and I think, because really what we're getting into now is really where we could go so much further in the revenue that we bring into the club, and I think the supporters are right to question the fact as we should be spending this, we should be investing in players. I think they're absolutely right. I'll caveat that by saying, the days of John Hartson and Chris Sutton and players like that are gone. Yeah. But Ange's proved with some of his, what he knows of emerging markets around the world, the players that you can buy up. But just go back to the numbers. You look at the profit before income tax at 27.6 million. A like for like on the previous year at the same time was 5.9. So if you bring the supporters back, the merchandise that you're selling on the day and everything that goes hand in hand with that, you can see that did make a huge benefit back, having the supporters back. However, if you look at cash in the bank, it's 25.6 million against 19.7. So our cash in the bank has not went up that much. However, that has been underpinned through profit from transfers at 25.8 million. And really, you're looking at Edouard and Ayer behind that. So if you look at the money that you've brought in for the two players in that period of time, that's allowed us to make the profit that we've done. Now, you can look at the board and you can say, actually, they are credible figures. When we look across the city, they're hanging on, waiting for the next share issue. They're waiting on somebody else putting money in at the club. That's why it's so important now that we kick on, because we get to the Champions League, we get that group place. We have to kick on from there, because that is a kick in the solar plexus that will be very difficult for them to come back from, if I'm being honest, because those investors that have put their money in their club at the moment and have been convinced to put the money in the club, it's all based on getting the money back for the Champions League. So they've been sold a dream. So we really need to kick on from that performance on Sunday from a footballing perspective, but from a business perspective now we're in a strong position. But that MoneyBall model that we're going to talk about is more important than ever. And Ange, in fairness, what I would say is Ange has created that himself at the moment. So he's came in, think about us, the mess that we were in, the complete and utter mess that we were in the summer, and even probably the summer prior, with players who were already wanting away. They could make history. They could be part of something that everybody's going to read about them. And we had players that were looking to get away at the start of the 2021 season. We were in a complete shambles at that time. Again, though, Ange wasn't our first choice. So let's think back to a bit of luck that we got. Eddie Howe, for whatever reasons, I think it was the bottle crashing. I think it was the goldfish bowl, if I'm being honest with Eddie Howe. And we were lucky enough now, when we look back, to get Ange Postecoglou. I've got family in Australia. Some of them support Rangers, and they were saying, this guy's the real ticket. We had a couple of guys in the group that we're in as well that knew of Ange and his background in Australia, and then moving to the J-League, and what he could do. But I don't think anybody envisaged that he would make the impact on the club that he's done. And it's been absolutely phenomenal. And one for me, I'm absolutely delighted that we've got Ange Postecoglou as our manager. And you look at you look at what he's achieved, and you look at how Ange gets it. He's brought in Abada, 19-year-old, Kyogo, 26, Scales, 23, Juranovic, 26. He's Hatati's 24, Gucci's 25, Giamakis 26, O'Reilly 21, Hart. Okay, he was brought in. We needed a goalkeeper like Joe Hart at 34 with experience to shore that everything up at the back. Starfelt 26. And then on loan, and hopefully we do tie them up, because Champions League will underpin this. If we get in Champions League, I do think that we sign Jota and Carter Vickers. And that's Jota at 22 and Carter Vickers at 23. You then look at that as assets of the football club right now, and we shouldn't. But what we need to build is, because when Celtic Football Club have success, everybody looks at Celtic Football Club from a global perspective, and they see the success. So there's teams in Europe, and there's teams in the Premiership, and teams further afield that look at the players that we've got, and we buy these players because they'll do a job for us, and we'll have success with these players for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. But we know that there has to be a period where we can move the players on. And if you look at the assets there, I mean, for the money we absolutely spent on the players to what they actually look like now as assets of our business. Football club and business, two different things at the moment I'm talking about. From a business perspective, that's multi-million pounds we're sitting in there, Tony, of assets in our football club right now. But where I'm coming from is Ange Postecoglou, he 100% loves our football club, loves the supporters, loves the opportunity. The players he's brought in love everything about it. You see it in their walk around the park. But this is football we're talking about. There will be players that will leave Celtic Football Club, and they'll leave for good money. And we're a club that gets deeply hurt by that as supporters, don't we? We even our own and Kieran Tierney, we don't, through the years, I've seen it myself through the years, with even Kerry Dalglish at the time, going back then, and the likes of Charlie Nicholas, who become hero to zero overnight because they want to leave a club. But I'll touch on the Ajax model when we come to talking about that. But they celebrate players who make their club money, because they're exactly in the same predicament as Celtic at the moment. The Dutch league is not, it doesn't get a lot of revenue from TV either, and there's only 2 or 3 clubs that will compete at that level. So when they sell a player on that they've either brought through their training academy, or they've either bought for 1 million, 1.5, and sell them for 35, 40 million, they celebrate it. But they can celebrate it because the supporters have got transparency, and I look down the pipeline to see what players are coming in at the back. And Ange is doing that. He's the old-fashioned football manager at the moment. He's dealing with everything on the park and everything off the park, and he's hands-on. I don't have a problem with that whatsoever, and I think as supporters, and I've seen some of the comments there, the big man is a phenomenon, and he'll go down in Celtic history. There is no doubt about that. He's won 1 cup already. It'll be an incredible journey with Ange. But he knows as well, and we know as supporters, we only become truly successful again is when we can compete again at the highest level in Europe. And up to now, and it's no slight on Ange, because he put a team together in a very short space of time. But again, that was because there was no plan behind us. So I can give the board praise. I can give the board praise for our P&L and our balance sheets. But what every supporter is right to do is question them over the model. And the model up to now has not been good enough at all. It's not been good enough. There was no succession plan and no sustainability. And we absolutely got lucky when Eddie Howe bottled it and Ange said, I'll take that. When they went to Ange and said, I'll take that job, by God, I tell you what he's done. He's been fantastic, But I'm just petrified that we make the same mistakes, Tony, and that's why we're talking tonight, Well,
that's the thing, and I was going to say that to you. We were talking about that before we came on air. The term "a selling club," it's something that as fans in our culture, we see it as like a sort of insult, if anything. But like you say, with other clubs that similar sized clubs that have had success in Europe in the past in different countries, they look at that as something to celebrate. And that's what I was going to sort of come to next as well, but just what you were touching on there. A failure to build from a position of strength is something that's sort of been our Achilles heel sort of since this model was adopted, perhaps even going back to the days of the Kellys and the Whites. So many times we've had a chance to really push on, and we've hesitated just too much, or we haven't. And a failure to build on that can really have a detrimental effect, and we've seen that in spectacularly bad fashion last year. But we hope, like you say, this time that it's something that we're coming back from, and we're going to bounce back from as soon as possible. In terms of other, you touched on Ajax there, Nick. If you're looking around, I'm saying specifically Europe at the moment, because we know that Europe's the hotbed of football in terms of purely financial matters, and in terms of club competition. Obviously, you have the Champions League, Europa League, etc. Are there other clubs similar size to Celtic, maybe even smaller than Celtic, but have models or have aspects of their model that you think is realistic and achievable for us to adopt, that would have positive results for us on and off the pitch?
Yeah, I think, we'll touch on Ajax in a minute, but if you look around Europe at the moment and you look at some of the teams out there, we were talking prior to the show, even in the UK, you look at somebody like Brentford, how they've had to use the MoneyBall model to build their team. And, apart from they had a slight runny, not picking up points, to pick more points back up at the weekend. That's worked fantastic for them. But if you look around Europe and some of the big leagues that are there, you look at, Lille and Monaco, Luis Campo in there. Yeah, if you look at Luis Campo at the time, he got Lille, and through being director of football or technical director, whatever role it was, they had a structure in place. He deals with the manager, but he puts a structure in below him, from a scouting system all the way up. You look at, somebody's just put it there. You look at Seville, Verdeco at Seville. What I would say is that Seville have been in the far reaches of Europe just about every year for the last 10 years. So again, that structure that they have in place, and again, they lose some of their bigger players all the time to teams around Europe. They lose players to Madrid, to Barcelona, but further afield as well. From that point of view, look at Atletico Madrid. Simone went in there as a manager, but he needed supported from that, and Berta went in there, and the structure that Simone does. But what it all comes down to as well is your structure is based on the way that you want your team to play as well. So what you do is you start to build a structure around, Celtic forever and a day. We go back, the ethos of Celtic was to entertain the fans. And, you go to people like Jock Stein and how we won the European Cup. It was all out attack. When you look at the stats over there in Lisbon against Inter Milan, it was phenomenal. You look at the teams as we've moved forward, even when the Davy Hayes and the Billy McNeils and the Tommy Burns were there. Wim Janssen in year one, Martin O'Neill flying. He played 3-5-2 with two wing backs far up the pitch. So the Celtic style is never going to change. Whether it's 3-5-2, 4-3-3, we're always going to want to play attractive football. So our model has to reflect that, and it has to reflect succession in managers as well that want to play that way. So the players that we buy, the players that we build through. There's a thing in the business world now. I've seen somebody put a message up there, and whilst I'm waxing lyrical about Ange at the moment, I can't. As I say, we've got lucky there, but I think absolutely, you've got football people and business people, and we need to keep them in two different brackets. But when it comes to a director of football, they actually have to have a bit of both. They have to have a bit of business awareness from that point of view, because under a director of football, you want a head of recruitment, and then you want a team of scouts out there. You want your academy to be at a certain level all the time. You know, if I look at our academy, you know, in the last year, I just think we've let go of too many boys out that academy at the moment. I'm not convinced that in some areas, certainly that we've brought in. That there's maybe some players we've brought in that are no better than players we've let away. You know, some players I've mentioned there, that's not the case. You know, we wouldn't say that. We've got some stars there, but you know, our academy for me is not yielding enough. So something's fundamentally wrong in there. And again, okay, we talk about Edouard, but that deal, that deal was masked. You know, PSG had that kind of tied up. We only got 40% of the sell-on fee and everything that goes with it from that point. So, you know, if I'm looking at a model right now, you know, before I go to Ajax, you know, and Ajax is not a secret, and it's been there for years for everybody to go and have a look at, and they still continue.
Celebrated worldwide, isn't it? You look Ajax, and from Ajax obviously came the Academy of Barcelona, obviously Johan Cruyff having the massive effect on both sides, but that's the like you say, they're celebrated places, and that's something we should be aspiring to, isn't it?
Well, you look at, I mean, it's at the highest level. You're absolutely right about Barcelona. You know, they had TK Begiristain went in there. He's now at Manchester City with Pep Guardiola. So if you actually look, everybody looks at Manchester City, you know, and you look at the City group, and Ange came from the City group as well, remember? So from that point of view. But when you look at what we have, or what Man City have achieved, they've got that scouting system. They're all over the world. You know, they are where they are. I just hope, for our sake, that we don't get dragged into the City group. I hope that doesn't happen, you know, because that's not a direction I'd like to see Celtic going. But we've had a few connections through the years with City and different people within there. So I'm hoping that their relationships have kind of are not cemented that that's a direction that Desmond wants to take us out, because I think that would be a mistake. But you know,
perhaps a step too far.
Right, absolutely. But coming back to Ajax, you know, they absolutely have a system that works. You know, Ajax, I touched on it earlier. They're in the Dutch league at the moment. They're in the Dutch league at the moment, who right now, who have probably late. I mean, we're what SPL. It's about 30 million. Sky give the whole group, you know. So Sky get 30 million, and that's divvied up in such a way. That's not enough to run a football club on. Ajax are exactly the same. It's probably less in Holland from that point of view. 8 players since 2017 have brought back to Ajax Football Club €307 million. So
It's incredible.
that's identifying, that's bringing the players through the academy that are good enough to get, and you know, I've seen guys put some names up there, and they're absolutely right. Ange has went to youth when he's had to, and it's served them well. But what I would say is, when you're looking at an Ajax, they've got 2-3 players leaving every season for the same as Kieran Tierney left. So, you know, Kieran...
And Katie's celebrated as he was sort of our golden ticket almost. You know, you knew from the minute you seen him that he was going to be a star, but the onus is on us to sort of, like we've discussed, the conveyor belt element of it. So as much as we loved Kieran Tierney, we've got to keep building on that. You have to,
and if you look at that again, come back to what Ange has to deal with at the moment, and in a short time, it's been difficult for him to. How many years have we talked about? We don't since KT left. Who is the replacement for Kieran Tierney? You know, we watched Taylor on Sunday, and he gives his all. He does give his all, but what he's but his quality is just lacking. We can't slag anybody for that, because the boy gives his. But where is the succession on left backs? You know, from our point of view, that would come through a proper scouting system. We'd know left backs, or we'd build left backs ourselves properly. You know, because they need that physicality now. You know, they need to be comfortable on the ball, especially if you look at inverted fullbacks now. They need to be really comfortable on the ball when they move into the middle of the park. That's a really difficult role to play. Pep Guardiola played that role at two fullbacks at Bayern Munich. He only plays with one inverted fullback now at Man City, and that's Cancelo. And if you look at Cancelo, he tops the Premier League for successful passes because he's very comfortable on the ball and he can play. And his defensive duties are fantastic, and he pops up with the old goal. We've never replaced Kane Tierney. We struggle. We've got Starfelt playing at left centre half, and again, I said to you on Sunday, he's sticking to his task. But when you've got a big 6'5" centre forward who knows you're left-footed and you're standing on your strong foot, he's going to turn you and twist you and knock you. You know, he did stick to his duties, but if we don't have the right succession plan, if we don't have the right targeting of players in certain positions, and when you look at the power of data, you know, what positions do they play? You know, what's their energy levels in a game? You know, where are they most effective in the park? This is where I feel we need to get to Celtic Football Club, because we can return to the higher levels of European football. You know, if you look at Bodo Glimt, you know, not only did they tuck us away, they tucked Roma away 6-1. You know, and they've half of their team is boys that have came through their system. So, you know, they're 6.5 hours from Oslo. You know, they're in the middle of nowhere, and they're beating teams like Roma 6-1. And I'm not be surprised if they get very close to this Conference Cup, if I'm being honest, because they're powerful. And that's
have to be classed as one of the favourites now. I would say just at least semi-finals, final.
The system we play is the system they play, but they go at the same time. They know when to come back at the same time. They're physical, they're fast, they're agile, they're good on the ball. They know each other. They play with confidence. They talk to each other. Angie's getting that there, and we've seen again that on Sunday there, where you know you're that close to the game. Actually, you can hear that in the game. But again, you know, they come from a population of 50,000. You know, in Glasgow alone, we're what, 1.6, 1.7 million. Never forget Scotland at 5.5. So, you know, I get what everybody's saying. We're bringing players. Players are getting their part. And I know Big Dane, he's a lovely big boy. You know, he goes out with one of our friends' daughters, you know, and he's sticking in and doing his job. And I tell you, what happens is, you know, Angie's really working with him, which is fantastic, you know. But is he going to be another? You know, that's what I'm saying. There's no reason why our youths can't be a Delit, or you know, from that point of view. He was the captain at Ajax at 19 year old. Took them to the semi-final of the Champions League. That's unbelievable, Tony. So, you know, what I'm trying to say is to put some context here. You look at that setup as well. You know, you look at Van der Sar, who's the chief executive, knows his football, was about Manchester United at its pomp when it was really successful. You know, the Alex Ferguson era. You know, at the time, pre-Glaziers, they had a good board. It was a good system. He knows what academies look like. He's seen the class of '92 coming through and everything that went with that. You know, so he's there. Unfortunately, you know, Mark Overmars stepped over the line with, you know, stupid texts and like that. But as director of football, technical director, and the scouting system below him, they were able to take on Johan Cruyff's legacy, you know, and start to build that, you know. And I've seen a quick. I'm trying not to get put off of the comments at the moment. I'm sure you'll go back to them, but. Absolutely. We look at the facility up at Lennoxtown and we kind of use the same facility all the time. And you go up there and we'll do the same drills. Now, I'm not slagging Ange one little bit at the moment, not at all, because how can we? What I'm saying is this club has got away. We've got a stroke of luck. We were in a really bad, dark place this summer. It was, you know, what's happening. There was a delay in the manager. Again, when I come back to that system and the way that Celtic want to play, there should be managers that we're already identifying. You know, why wouldn't we why wouldn't we look at the manager at Bodo Glimt moving forward? Maybe that's too far out of range now. As you know, I'm talking about with the time that Ange is moving on. Hopefully that'll not be, a year, 2 years, or 3 years. Hopefully Ange is here for a period of time. But Ange can help us just now. We should be looking at Ange to put somebody in place that is a director of football that can then look for Ange's successor. So who are the Bodo Glimt managers or coaches at the moment? Van Tag at Ajax. Where is the next one that would like a move away from somewhere else that can come to Celtic? And I think we need to get away from stop making jobs for the boys within that network as well. It's great if you've got the ability and you're Celtic minded, fantastic, but let's put the ability first. Let's look at those who have experience in that field who can help us to build a sustainable model, a sustainable team. And one of the big admissions that we need to make, you touched on it, we should celebrate the fact that we shouldn't be disappointed that we're a selling club. We should encourage the fact that these players that come and be custodians of the jersey for a period of time are going to go on, and we're going to get rewarded for the time that we're there. But guess what? When Kieran Tierney vacates that left back position, we know who the left back coming in is. And I think that's where we need to get to. And we need to get away from that terrible close season where Neil Lennon was absolutely just, and Pete Lawler in the end, sorry for the language, but we were just spunking money on average players. That's not a plan. That's not a plan.
And it's one of the biggest criticisms about you hear it a lot, usually after a defeat or a bad. You say, we never spend money, we need to spend money, this and that. And the ironic thing being that last summer we did spend a hell of a lot of money on players, and but it's all about getting recruitment, and it's not just at Celtic's level. You go right above. Manchester City spend a hell of a lot of money on players, but more often than not, they tend to be good ones. You look across the city. I mean, perfect example being there on Sunday in the Manchester derby. United have spent they've worked out. United have spent just as much as City under the years that Pep's been there, and if anything, they've went backwards. It's poor recruitment and a bad setup. It's a recipe for disaster, and that's why I saw one of the comments that was coming up there. It was a really good point that I think it was Donny Boy that made it, that if these guys at Ajax, especially because we're using them as an example, they're managing to acquire these massive fees for these players, because not only are they doing it domestically, they're doing it on the European front as well. And I think it's no coincidence that the times where we've garnered our biggest fees is when we've been dining at the top table in Europe as well. So yeah, it's true. It's a cycle. It's a ball. It's a money ball, as we say. Nic, it's all about having a proper board and structure in place. I made this point when I first started on this podcast, where I says when we were a total mess when we started doing this last year. It was coming up to the end of last season. I say Celtic works best when it's all singing from the same hymn sheet. It says when you've got the board and the manager having a good relationship, the manager having a happy dressing room, which more often than not in our environment will create a winning team on the pitch, which makes the supporters believe in what the manager's doing. It will give the board that nice buffer of perhaps if they make one or two decisions that we don't agree with, most supporters are quite happy if we've got good European football to look forward to, if we've got cup finals to look forward to and league championships. It's all about having all of the elements working cohesively, moving in the same direction, because if you have, board members and the manager having a disagreement, if you have a manager who isn't having a good time with the players, results break down, supporters get on the players' back, get on the manager's back, and it all, sadly, it can all end in protests outside the front door. So it's so important that we get all of these ingredients right, and hopefully it won't be too long before we're back at the Champions League top table. And I just want to say, one of the guys, I also think it was Davey, I'm not sure who it was, but he says, how are we not getting more viewers and subscribers. Mate, thanks for your kind comments about saying how that you've enjoyed the show so far tonight. Listen, the only way we grow is by word of mouth. So everybody who's joining us tonight, welcome along. But it's on YouTube, so just hit that little subscribe button and the little bell next to it, and the channel will grow. But the more the merrier, as we say. We're going to have lots of different shows, lots of different variety conversation as our show grows. But thanks for everyone for their comments so far tonight. I do hope you're enjoying it as much as we are putting it on for you. Yeah, moving on for the sort of youth element. Oh, sorry, Nick, on you go.
Yeah, I was going to one for the guys that have came on actually, and give them. I see that we'll pick up some of the points actually, because I think it's only fair when people make comments that we maybe come back and address some of them, which would be great. But I'll put something out there for them to think over the next 2 or 3 minutes, and they can put it on. So, just to give you an idea of what Celtic could be now, and actually it's what Angie's achieved now. And somebody said there was Lennon Law's panic buys, 110% of our panic buys, because we never had a plan and we panicked at the end. So let's talk about what we've got now. So how much do we? I'll name some players that we know are playing well, and if we give it 2 years, and we'd hope they'd maybe stay for a bit longer, and of course Angie would stay for longer. That's touch wood. That's what we all want. But if I say to you now, collectively, Abada, Kyogo, Juranovic, Hatate, Giamakis, O'Reilly, and if we did sign Jota, okay, so we'll go with Abada, Kyogo, Juranovic, Hatate, Giamakis, O'Reilly, Jota, as a collective in, say, 3 years' time, we'll call it. How much revenue do you think, if they play at the top of their game for us, we get into the Champions League, and they play at the top of the game in the Champions League, how much as a collective do you think they players can bring us in if they were to depart in 3 years' time from a selling point of view? That's what I'd ask everybody just to think about, and we can see what numbers. You know, I think there'll be some players in there that'll have different players at 100 million and that, but let's be realistic as a collective.
It's a bit realistic.
Bearing in mind, I talked about 8 players since 2017 with Ajax at 307 million. I know somebody made a comment that they're playing in the Champions League. We get to the Champions League, the players will enjoy playing in the Champions League. The name of Celtic Football Club, I think, in my opinion, is as big as the name of Ajax. We won the European Cup in 1967. Round the world, Celtic became famous. The green and white hoops you see everywhere. So if we can build that, and we can start to build a sustainable plan, we get into the Champions League, players will want to come and play for Celtic Football Club, and we'll get back to attracting players that we can. But I would ask everybody just to maybe put that in the box, and let's see what number comes out in pounds and pence for the collective players. So, Tony, you wanted to ask about the youth?
Yeah, I was just sort of the next sort of just sort of rounding up, Nick. To be honest, we can't talk about the different models and how clubs are run without speaking, of course. And I thought I flung this in because I thought it was quite topical at the moment. Just obviously with the new, we're obviously not going to get into the reasons why he's selling up, but I think we all know the reasons why. But we'll stick to the sporting element of why. But the news broke this week that Roman Abramovich is putting Chelsea up for sale. He's been owner there since 2003, so 19 years. He has spent the estimate £2.2 billion getting Chelsea from a higher mid-table club with some great history, a lot of good stories in the FA Cup, etc. Into one of at least being able to dine at the absolute top table. And we're seeing that. I always say in the modern era there is the pre-Abramovich era and the post-Abramovich era, because we've seen we always have Barcelona and Real Madrid. They have the sort of presidential type financial model and how the clubs run. But Abramovich was the first of those, almost the oligarch. Not even just he's a brand within himself. we then obviously have what has become the City Group at Sheikh Mansour. We see obviously it coming at Newcastle as well. It's almost a geopolitical football in itself, sport, the sport of football now. I must admit, I can understand. I've got a lot of reservations about how these guys run the clubs in terms of it's just money that I can't. Your brain can't even process. Especially given where we are in the food chain, we almost have to box a lot cleverer and to get our rewards. It was just the sort of thing, what you touch on, the sort of the era of the super owner, as it were, and I'm talking very hypothetically here, but is it the type of thing that you would ever sort of welcome at Celtic? One of these sort of, I know we of course, Dermot Desmond's our majority share, sorry, he's our biggest shareholder. He's a billionaire in himself, but we're talking about these almost, it's almost like states and countries having their say on how football clubs are run. Would it be anything even remotely like that? Would you ever welcome that within the corridors at Celtic?
I think the straight answer to that's no, and I'll tell you why. I think if you look at Abramovich owns over 50% of Chelsea Football Club. That becomes an issue from that point of view. It's he acquired the club for 140 million at the time, which really and when you look at what Newcastle went for, that was a snip.
You think players themselves go for those kind of fees now? When you think about it, Nick,
absolutely, 140 million. There are players, and the problem is the club was valued at 2.4 billion. He has got loans for him up to 1.5 billion into Chelsea Football Club, so he's now looking for 3 billion back. Just look at the world where we are at the moment. It's not a buy. I mean, you've got people like Conor McGregor saying that he would be interested in taking Chelsea over. Jim Ratcliffe that's in Ineos. No wonder he could buy Chelsea. We buy raw material from him, and it's through the roof at the moment, and will continue to go through the roof in that game.
It's the way it is at the moment.
You look at USA money and you look at Middle East money. Middle East money. You have to look at Newcastle. You have to think it. If you're a Newcastle fan, you're delighted at the moment. Your club's been walling about with people like Steve Bruce as its manager. For a big, for people who are fundamentally proud of the club that they achieve. Simon Jordan, if you ever listen to him, he always has run-ins with Amanda Staveley when they're on Talk Sport. And when you're talking about Saudi Arabian money, that's there's one thing Dubai, Qatar, and some would say, or Abu Dhabi, some would say some of the civil rights there is humanitarian and everything that goes on there, but certainly Saudi Arabia, the reputation that's had.
It's a whole different ball game, isn't it?
And for me, Dermot Desmond is 34.6, 34.7 million. So percent, of our club, and I think that's about where you'd want to be, if I'm being honest, because Dermot Desmond, he's a majority shareholder. You've got Chris Traynor in there. You've got the global investment bank that are in there as well, that are also in Manchester United and Inverness. You've got a couple of local, kind of the chap that's in Clyde Ports and the Salford the canals and everything like that, and the Manchester shipping lanes. The chap that's in the woolen mill. So I think at that point, when it comes to ownership of a club and majority shareholders, I think we've got it about right, because you've not got anybody in a dominant position that's over 50%. You look at fan base, you look at fan ownership. I'm not too sure, if I'm being honest. I'd need to research that further. I know that Barcelona democratically, through their supporters and through their ownership of the club, vote their president in over a term period. Germany are the 50% plus one share that allows the fans to stop oligarchs. Well, there will not be many at the moment coming in to buy football clubs, in fairness, but whether it be people from Saudi Arabia, other parts of the Middle East or the USA, that prevents that happening. So I would say that the model we've got just now is there. Would I like to see the fans represented on the board? Yes, and whatever makeup that looks at. But as far as somebody coming in and taking 51% of our club, I think that would destroy the values and the ethos of what Celtic was all about.
Yeah, it's a slippery slope for me. I'm totally with you on that, Nick. I mean, I'm all for it. I accept the realities of certain models, and there's always going to be somebody at the table with more money in their pocket than you. But I think the 50% above being the sole property of one individual is a dark road to go down. And we'll wait and see what the legacy of Abramovich's investment is, but if and when he's sort of once he's left the office. There's been a few comments there that say sort of between the sort of 10 and 15 perhaps, and then for some of the players that you mentioned, 20 million plus, provided we get into the Champions League, which I think is a fair assessment. I'm going to go just before we finish up, Nick. I'm going to give you a total hypothetical. Right, although we're saying it's not something we would necessarily represent. I'm giving you full control of Celtic. Money is no object. Is there and all we can live in fantasy land for 10 minutes. Was there anyone in particular you would buy if there was one player that's in world football now you could sign for Celtic? Who would it be?
It's a great question, that one, I tell you. I think in the world of football just now, I think if you had the opportunity to bring him to your club, I think Lewandowski has to be up there at the moment.
Phenomenal player. Yeah.
It doesn't matter at what level he plays at. He tends to score goals. I mentioned him earlier as well. I never played at the highest level, but I think. I've always admired the defensive side of the game. I think somebody's said, Stephen said Mbappe. I think, you always look at centre forwards and match winners, but there's a good shout there. De Bruyne, what a game he had.
De Bruyne, great shout, Joe. Yeah,
like a Rolls Royce on Sunday. I think Cancelo for me again would be a fantastic player. It's not somebody that somebody would. Say would be an obvious choice, but when you look at when I look at marginal gains, and you look at players on the pitch and the job that they do, and they don't waste the football, and they can defend and they can start attacks. That's the type of player that I like. So up front for me, I know there's and I think they're all right. I think there's nobody wrong in there. The names are.
There's a few classics in there. I must admit, and people might get shocked. I mean, for the folk that listen in regularly, I know that I reference Man United quite a bit as well. That is my English team, but I have to say But for me, it would be Mo Salah. He's one of those players that, regardless of the rivalry, it's just even watching him on the telly is incredible at the moment. He's just at the absolute peak of his powers. But yeah, we can but dream. But listen, although we've not, we wouldn't be able to attract the guys of those calibre, but we've certainly had a few cracking players over the years.
Alan would score 400 goals.
Yeah. Could they do it at the Almondvale pitch though? That's the 400 goal question.
At the Tony Macaroni.
Oh, absolutely. That's where legends are made. Absolutely. So I think obviously I'm conscious. I don't want people to get for the show to run on too long. I think for tonight we'll call it. But I think sort of the things like fan ownership, etc., is something that we need to do some more shows on, and definitely we can dedicate some more airtime to that in the future, Nick, because it's some, we could talk about football and financial models all night. But I just want to thank you for
Carl there,
Carol Muggleton, the legend himself. Have you enjoyed your debut on the Endless Celts?
Listen, I've enjoyed it. I've tried to not be too distracted with the messages coming, but there's some great messages there, and there's people talked about the world at the moment, and I think at the moment, if you've got somebody funding your football club right now, the way things are going, I don't see a recession too far around the corner. So if we've got people that are in old Colombian boy right there, but if we've got people that are funding our business at the moment, then I think we need to be grateful right now. I'd just like to see a more sustainable structure put in place, and again, from a position of strength that we're in right now, we should stretch away. We need to be in the Champions League. The players that we have will love being in the Champions League. They'll be tremendous, and we'll attract more players. And again, we can spend more time on, as you said before, at some other point, on fan ownership and our youth academy. But no, I really appreciate you asking me on. I know it's been a few weeks and months it's taken. But what I would say is thanks very much to both you and Stephen and everybody that's tuned in tonight. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem, mate. And just before I go, I just want to let all of you again. Thanks to everyone for joining in tonight. Thanks for everyone for your comments. Most of them, everyone seems to have enjoyed themselves tonight. We'll definitely get Nic back on, and we'll look into some other models. I think fan ownership, especially that would be a really good show. So I think we'll get something in the diary for a future show and get that booked in. But
we'll maybe talk about strip clubs in Edinburgh between the 1980s and 90s, Tony. That might get
I dare say that might have to go out after 9 o'clock. but yeah, we've got another big episode coming your way here on Friday night, guys. It is the 100th episode of Endless Celts on Friday night, 100th regular episode. So we're having a big night. It's going to be all 6 of the regular guys. We're going to be on. We're not really going to be talking too much. We're going to be having a big Scottish Cup special quiz. And with it being Friday night and with it being a milestone, we're going to open the bar up as well and have a couple of drinks. So Stephen is relenting his hosting duties again. So I'm going to be the quiz master on Friday night. I'm going to be joined by John, who'll be my glamorous assistant on the night. And the rest of the boys are going to... we're going to test our knowledge on all things Celtic and Dundee United in the Scottish Cup. So invite you all along live on Friday night. Get involved in the chat. John's going to be keeping an eye on the comments and see. We've not got the quiz fully finished yet, but we'll see how many points are up for grabs and see if you guys in the comments and joining in can beat us regulars and to see if you do know the history after all. So that's Friday night. All welcome. Usual time, 8 o'clock. And that's really about it for tonight, guys. It is, as I'd say, just want to sign off again. Thanks for everyone for tuning in. And once again, thanks to Nic for his insight tonight. We really appreciate it. And thanks again, everyone. Don't forget to subscribe, like I said, all the new guys, and spread the word, and that will help the show grow as well. Thanks again. Good night, and hail, hail.
Hail, hail.